Alright. Hello, my fellow readers. This is I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fan fiction review. As always, I'll be leaving a link to the story in the description below. Please like, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notification. Leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story and any future fan fictions you want me to read or review. And as always, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world. So, the story I'm going to be reviewing is called Loup, Égaré. It's a Phantom of the Opera fanfiction written by Kagome Loves Koga, otherwise known on YouTube as Kiara Unochita, who I'm actually subscribed to. She is actually the one who told me about the story. It's like, hey, okay, and asked me to review it. And overall, let's get started. So the fanfiction is basically sort of an insert light story for Phantom of the Opera. There's this girl named Kit who basically is something of someone who's a trophy wife that doesn't want to be a trophy wife. I don't know much about the lore of Phantom of the Opera. She kind of doesn't really like being alone. She's a workaholic, stuff like that, and she's being set up for a marriage with this guy named Darren. Oh, excuse me. And she doesn't like it. She doesn't really like being the wife. She tolerates it. She wants to be the wife, but she has to grin and bear it and smile and put on this act of pretending to be a trophy wife when she doesn't really like it. And then Darren shows up, drunk off his ass, and tries to have his way with her. And then she manages to get away from his grasp, gets hit by a car, and ends up in the Universal Phantom of the Opera, where she befriends Yorick, and starts to change the story around a little bit, basically just near the end. It does remind me a little bit of Hercules and the Modern Girl in that regard, but Hercules and the Modern Girl kind of does the idea differently, where this one really only interferes with the story at the very end, at least to my knowledge. Again, not familiar with the universe and the story. Hercules and the Modern Girl was basically had Natalie. It basically forced to be involved. Like the fates in that story basically told her, said, you're gonna be involved whether you want to or not. You might as well just get it over with. And she had to get involved because it's the fates. You gotta listen to the fates. The fates said you're gonna do this. You're gonna do it whether or not you wanna. And it basically so this story basically slowly changes the story of Yorick. I believe at the end of the story, he dies. I've never seen the movie. I'm not familiar with the play. I wanted to see the play. I always wanted to see the play, but I'm not too familiar. I'm guessing he dies at the end because it's a tragedy. Of course, he's probably gonna die, and so instead of dying, he goes to help Kit, and he gets shot over the bridge and falls in the river at the end. And Kiara wakes up. So apparently, over the course of the plot, there's certain parts of the story that has Kiara, slowly waking up from something, and you hear this continuous beeping, which turns out to be a heart monitor, revealing that something really weird is going on. Which I kind of like the concept. Like when she's awake, she somehow entered the Phantom of the Opera universe, or the possibility she created it through the aspects of a coma. Coma. I always heard stories of people who are in comas. They create this magic, this really weird worlds. To kind of pass the time, so that way they can keep their brain active. I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or if it's actually true. I'm not familiar with comas. But this is what it looks like when she went in the coma. In order for her brain to survive, and it created it created this world where she's in the Phantom of the Opera with Yorick, just trying to keep her alive and keep her from going Brendan or something like that. And I think it was a good idea. At the end of the story, we were set up with a cliffhanger where she finally wakes up at the end, at the end of the movie, where instead of, I guess, he dies in front of his organ, he takes her because they become kindred spirits, not lovers, but more friends than anything else. And you know, they're finally caught, and Eric is shot, and they both fall over the river, and then she wakes up with no one around, especially with the reveal that Derek's still trying to, you know, get to her. Which sets up the sequel pretty nicely. I don't think, in terms of my thoughts of the plot, I think it was a decent enough drama. Stories like Melancholia and Deluge, both Castlevania dramas, blow the story out of the water. I'm sorry, those two stories specifically are so much better. Melancholia especially. I'm still waiting for like the final revisions of Deluge. But Melancholia completely destroys this. Like, would you ask me which drama's better? This one, Loup, Égaré, or Melancholia? I'm sorry, just Melancholia is just a much better drama overall. But despite the fact it's not gonna win any like fan fiction awards. I know like the Kim Possible fan fiction section, a couple authors actually have like a yearly celebration of like all the fan fictions that came out. Related to Kim Possible, and they do like a little award show. That's actually pretty cool. I may actually show a video looking at that. I do also have a Kim Possible fan fiction a couple I want to read, because there's like 5. 4 of them are like a series. One's like one starring Yori. But overall, I think the Kiara, I'm not gonna call her authoress or Koga, because I already know it's one. The author is a chick. I'm subscribed to her on YouTube. And 2, I think it'd be much easier to just call her Kiara. Save a lot of time. Kiara wrote a pretty engaging story. Nothing too spectacular. Nothing done exceptionally well, but a good story. Based on how it ended, it looks like this story is just setting up the events of the sequel. Like, this is like a lot of novels, like a lot of shorter novels, when they want to, you know, explore everything and expand upon the world as much as possible, they usually make the first story just setting up the characters and the plot and just starting things off, and then we get the massive world building and prime character development in the second and so on stories. Aragon was actually known to do this pretty well. Aragon was a good story, but it only really built upon one part of the entire universe of Aragon. Sorcerer's Stone, that just set up just how Harry got into Hogwarts, and like, you know, the meeting with it just set things up, and then, you know, Harry Potter got better and better as the books went on. I know it's basically, this story is just like that. Just, it looks like it's only going to be a 2-parter, with this one just setting up the events, and the sequel. What's the sequel called? One second. There's like 31 chapters. I gotta go all the way down. The Depasement, I believe that's the name of it. Being the sequel, we're going to be basically just being like the big world building story. So it's like it's not. It looks like you're gonna have to read both of these at this like one after the other, instead of just reading this and then having to wait. You know, make more sense to read both of them at the same one after another. Characters. This is a 1-character story. Kit is a good enough character, but all the other characters kind of suffer from lack of screen time, which again makes sense in the scheme of things, where if you look at this from like a 2-part story, it makes sense. I mean, we're not going to get like all the character developments from Christine, from Dagora, from Reyes, or whatever, all the other characters, aside from Kit and a little bit of Eric towards the end. Eric kind of stayed the same until the end, so he didn't really, until like the last 10 chapters or so, he didn't get any solid character development. And then, then he started, liking Kit, or I'll talk about that when I get to Kit. Eric stays the same. Pretty much through most of the story. About the last third of the story, he slowly starts to get decent enough character development to realize that, despite the fact he's lonely, he's disfigured, he has all these things, like he's worried that people will not like him for his looks, and then over the course of the story he realizes Kit doesn't care, and while she made it very clear she doesn't really love him, she's there to, like, as a kindred spirit, sort of like a friend and or a confidant. And I really like that little touch over the fact, not every story has to have romance, because usually sometimes forced romance kills a story. So I like the fact that Kiara didn't just go full-fledged and like, let's put romance in this. So it's like, oh my god, and I would have torn this story a new one if there was any forced romance, but there's not. And I really like that. I hope there's no romance in the sequel. They just need to stay friends. Eric and Kit just need to stay friends. Because, Eric just needs a friend more than a girlfriend or anything. And Kit, or should I call her Kiara? Because it's pretty obvious. Kit is basically an author avatar. When those of you don't know what an author avatar is, an author avatar is when someone projects their own self into a story. Most of the time it's unintentional. They don't even realize it. A lot of authors do this. When they're like doing a big story, they kind of do this. They don't mean to do it, but they do. And sometimes it's done on purpose. Twilight. What? I didn't. I was saying that. Who said that? Who said that abomination of a story? I didn't. I didn't. Done. But this one, Kit is a decent enough character on her own. Again, like I said, Kit is a one-character story. This is a one-character story. Kit is the only one that gets substantial character development because, I'm guessing Kiara is expecting us to know about Phantom of the Opera before, getting into this. And, it could also play into the fact that all the other characters are going to get development in the sequel. But then again, but also there's still a big what if, like how the sequel's going to play out, because there's still the mystery of what was the Phantom of the Opera world really like? Was it part of a coma? Did it actually happen? What's the deal with Darren? What his role is going to play in the sequel? What Kit's going to do? How is he going to develop more? And there's many different factors. And I think overall the sequel hook was probably the best part of the story. I'll get a little more into that at the end. Kit developing a separate personality. I actually thought he needed something because over the course she wasn't getting enough character development to for the story. It's like she's doing okay, but she needed something more. She needed something extra. She needed that. And then we got her basically when Eric was going to make Don Juan. She was basically all alone for months on end, and she basically broke down mentally. And so that created a split personality, which I thought was a nice touch. I'm kind of conflicted on this because on one hand, I think it was that kick that needed. I just realized I had like a pimple. It was the character development that she needed, and the wolf helped so much with her character arc as a whole. And then but at times I felt Wolf was the better character. I know it's weird. It's weird. And this just literally may be me, but I felt that the wolf kind of started to overshadow Kit. I know the wolf is technically Kit. The wolf, to describe her, is basically her. At the beginning of the story, she mentions how she has to hold all these things in, like being who she wants to be in order to be a proper lady, aka a trophy wife for this guy. And the wolf is basically all her inner desires that she's been holding up all over the years. So it introduces a nice dynamic. I thought that was really nice. And I really like the characters. Again, one character story. I mean, Melancholia, which is another great story, was a one character story too, with the development of Joachim Armister. And I thought his character development was done really well. And stuff like that. Grammar errors. There are a couple errors scattered across the stories. Nothing to like completely ruin your immersion, but enough that it gave me pause. Like, why are there so many errors? Why? Pacing and imagery. I thought the imagery was nice, particularly towards the end because because of a symptom of the pacing. I think the pacing went a little too fast in places. I'm not saying it was bad. I just think the story at points needed to slow things down a little bit. It's kind of the same. It's kind of the opposite problems of when I reviewed Misconceptions, which is that big Powerpuff Girls fanfiction I reviewed. Go check out that video. I'm gonna be making like a folder for like all the fanfictions that I did. One for reviews, one for reading. And my main problem with that story was the author, Sandstorm 3D, focused so much on the character development. It actually became a double-edged sword as the story went on, and everything kind of started unraveling. The pacing was just so tedious. I actually felt I'll say it once, I'll say it again. This was the first fanfiction I actually fell asleep reading because because of how dreadfully dull it was at points. The character development was the only reason I still read the story, because the development was phenomenal. The grammar fell apart, the pacing fell apart, the plot actually slowly fell apart because the author was trying to shove in so much character development that it completely just partially just ended up destroying the story. And even then, I hesitantly gave it a pass because how the author did the character was just that phenomenal. But this is the same thing. Instead of speeding things up, what I wish would have happened in that story, there's certain parts that needed to be slowed down. You could have actually padded some scenes of Eric teaching Kit more. Maybe showed like a couple days of being bullied, because I'm going to get to that in a little bit. There are not a lot of problems, but enough that I have to pause on the pacing. I just really wish it could have been slower. Not just completely slow that it needed to be just deathly slow, like oh my god, but enough that we would actually get a feel for the world more. But so, like, if I had to count it in words, probably another 15,000 words. At the bare minimum, it's up to you. It's up to Kiara to figure that out. Maybe just add a scene here and there, just to pad it out. That's really all the story needs is padding. Just to get that camaraderie between Eric and Kit really established to set up the event, to better set up the events for the sequel. But that's about it. And finally, the final thoughts section. Would I recommend this? I'm kind of a gray area on this. I can't really say one or the other, mainly due to the fact of the sequel. How the story ended, it really plays into this fact. So until I do the review of the sequel, I'm going to leave my opinion on whether or not to recommend this story firmly indecisive. I can't choose one or the other, because it had a lot of things going for it, but at the same time, I personally, on the concept of subjectivity versus objectivity, like subjective is my opinion, I believe objectivity is my opinion, and subjectivity is basically unbiased. In my opinion, I didn't really like it, but I can easily see why other people will like it. I mean, it did have a lot of good things going for it, but a lot of things I didn't like, mainly because I'm not a big fan of. It's kind of weird. It's one of those things that you can't really describe in detail, but it's just, for some reason, you just don't like it. It's literally impossible for everyone to like every single story. It's literally impossible. And sometimes you'll read a story and you'll like it, and you'll just won't know the reason why you don't like it. Or sometimes you'll like a story and you wouldn't be able to describe why you like it. This is basically me. I don't like it for some reason, but I cannot describe why, because I just don't know myself. It's weird, I know. Favorite part, the sequel hook. I thought the sequel hook was done really well. It actually made me hopeful. There's a lot of unanswered questions, which a sequel hook needs to do. That's the whole point why I don't like franchises in movies and video games, because you gotta have at least some kind of sequel hook. Unless you're some kind of broad over franchise like Mario. It's very loosely connected in terms of plot and continuity. But I think, but in terms of books, that this needs to be done. You can't just say, oh, here's a sequel. And it's like, where did this come from? What the hell? Unless, it's just in the same universe sort of deal. Like, oh, we're going to make a whole universe and the story's just going to be about different areas. But I thought the sequel was done pretty well. It gave out a ton of questions that I really want answered. What's Darren's plan? What scheme he's playing out? What was the deal with the Phantom of the Opera universe? What happened while she was sleeping? What's Eric's fate? There are so many questions I actually want to see answered. But I'm willing to patiently wait. I waited about 5 years for Deluge to be finished, but I'm willing to wait that long. I'm willing to wait for this. Anything I would want to change? Two things. Well, three is kind of sort of. The third one's kind of sort of. The first one, I think it would make a lot of sense to pad out the story. I don't know what would you do to pad it out, but it needs something to extend the story, so that way we have. So it gets more Gwendois. We can get a better connection between Kit and Eric. Give them a little more depth, particularly Eric, for people, or at least give some insight of what happened with Eric to people who don't know Phantom of the Opera. The second one is actually the last two are actually pretty minor. They have to do with the genre and the reading. Genre, this should be just a straight drama. Just a straight drama. Get rid of the adventure. Again, you don't have to if you don't want to. That's just my opinion. Third, the rating. Why is this story rated M? This does not need to be rated M. It does not. And here are my reasons. I'm actually, you can't see it now because I'm doing the face cam, but I'm actually on the very first chapter of Loup, Égaré, and I'm looking at the rating. It says rated M, and on the author's note, rated M for mentions of rape, sexual assault, violence, language, depression, mental illness, miscarriage / abortion / teen pregnancy, and abusive relationship. If you have a trigger thing about sexual assault / rape, this isn't a story for you. Turn it about now. While I'm okay with the fact that there are some people who have aversions to sexual assault. This is the same thing I'm going to do with, I'm going to compare the story to another fan fiction that had the same problem, and that was A Soldier and His Gardevoir. Go watch that video. Basically, but if you want to know the short and simple of it, I argued that the tags that the author made in that story were not really done well enough to warrant an M-rated tag. Same thing with this story. Yes, most of these things, if not all of them, would warrant an M-rated fic, but the way they are used don't really show that. Yes, on paper, yeah, all these tags, okay, M-rated. No, it's putting the tags in general. Oh, excuse me, that came out of nowhere. It's putting the tags in general versus how you use them. Let me go through each tag separately and at the end explain why. So first off, we have rape. That tag needs to go. At most, we had 2 attempts at sexual rape and 1 mention of another character raping, which is Bequet. No. That tag needs to go. First off, the 2 attempts at rape, they're followed under sexual assault. It's not really rape until you actually get them dressed and you start raping them. Soldier and His Gardevoir, it actually had a rape scene with a rape actually happening. Why is that story T-rated instead of M-rated? You may think, simple, because as soon as the rape started, it went into the mind. The Gardevoir actually went into her mind and literally just thought about seeing her husband and completely blocking out the rape, so we didn't even read any details. We just know, but me and other people as the readers know what's actually happening. It's just not written on the paper, on the screen. So we don't see it. We know what's happening, but all we got is an allusion to it. That's about it. So, and there are T movies that actually have sexual assault. So sexual assault. Next one. This could be rated M for sexual assault, but the problem is it's not an intrinsic plot point except at the very beginning. I have a feeling the sequel will probably be a proper M-rated story, but with how it's worked here, it's not in the story, it's not intrinsic to the story enough to warrant an M-rated for sexual assault. Violence. There's barely any violence in the story. We have Kit beating up her Darren and then beating up kicking Bequette in the face, and some bullying. Not really M-worthy in terms of violence. Language. You have to have really gratuitous amounts of language to get an M-rated for language. 2008's Death Ray starring Jason Statham. That was a movie that deserved an M rating based on the language alone, because the movie didn't even last 5 seconds without a curse word being thrown out. The most... What is the Guinness World Record for most curse words said in a video game? That was House of the Dead Overkill. That currently has the world record for most curse words said in a video game ever, and it said over 200 curse words, I believe. I don't know the amount, but I know it currently still holds the record, despite the fact apparently Beyond Good and Evil 2 is probably going to give it a run for its money. Based on how many curse words were in the trailer, it looks like that may be the first game to give it a run for its money in language department. There is not enough language to warrant the M rating. Depression. Okay, as someone who was diagnosed with depression at age 12, I can see the depression with Kit. The problem is a lot of teen movies actually deal with depression. Again, if this story was made in the 1980s, okay, you can kind of see that it being an M-rated story. But nowadays, where a lot of teen movies actually deal with mental illness, a lot of teen movies deal with depression, a lot of teen movies deal with teenage pregnancy and stuff like that, or abortion and miscarriage. None of these three really need to warrant being a T-rated, especially the teen pregnancy thing, which was mentioned once as a couple sentences in one specific chapter. That needs to go. That tag completely needs to go. Mental illness, okay, multiple personality disorder. That's fine. I'm a little iffy. I think the mental illness is the only thing kind of making Loup Égaré kind of deserve to be M-rated. And even then, it's really just it's just an alternate personality. It only really impacts 1-2 chapters out of a 31 chapter story. But I would kind of put this one in the gray area. Depression. Again, I can see the depression, but it doesn't make an impact enough on the story to kind of be M-rated. Plus, again, the fact that a lot of teen movies actually have depression as a plot point. Not all of them, but some of them do, and it's war stories in terms of mental illness that are that are in not only M-rated, but there's some that are actually still T-rated. The Mentalist. There's that one crime show with the guy who has schizophrenia, and that's technically classified as a T-rated show, actually. Surprisingly, I don't know enough. I believe it's called The Mentalist. I don't know the exact name of the show, but I'm pretty sure it's actually a T-rated show, not an M-rated show. So if a show about a guy who solves crime with schizophrenia can avoid an M-rated, this can avoid it. And abusive relationships. The abusive relationship only happens in the first chapter. Just like teenage pregnancy and just like rape, this tag shouldn't be here. The tag should just be sexual assault, depression, and mental illness. Violence, not enough violence. Language, not enough language. Rape, there is no rape. There's one mention of rape and 2 attempted rapes. Teenage pregnancy, there's only one mention of teenage pregnancy. It's only about 2 sentences. An abusive relationship only happens in the first chapter. These 4 tags do not need to be here. This story needs to be a T-rated. This is a perfect example of overestimating how dark an author will think a story is going to be, when in actuality, it's not really that dark at all. Yes, the mental illness kind of throws the shades of gray into the story, but that's about it. And it's just not details up. It's not going into. It's not a lot of these aren't really intrinsic to the plot overall enough to kind of warrant being M-rated. You know, because there are M-rated rape stories. Trust me, I found them really weird. It's just how to use, just the tags themselves combined with how you use them, it warrants whether or not what a story should be rated. And I think this story needs to be rated T, not M. And overall, that's my opinion. If Kiara wants to keep the story M-rated, I can't stop her. I literally cannot stop her from keeping the story M-rated. This is just my opinion. And overall, that's my review. I do like the story. I think it's a decent enough story with a hell of a hook at the end. But overall, it's nothing really spectacular. I mean, probably the sequel will blow me just completely convince me that this is a good story. This is just a good setup to the sequel. But until I start reading the sequel, I cannot say anything good or bad about the story, except for the tags. So, this has been Dark Symphony 777. This is my review on Loup Égaré by Kagome Loves Kiara. And cut.